Hello.
Hi.
Again. Right, so welcome to the next level. And today's edition has a very special guest, which is Martin Johnson. So Martin is the founder and CEO of T2 Learning and Development Consultancy, award-winning as well. You've just won an award, haven't you? May I add?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Martin and his team, they work with the likes of the military, professional sports teams, companies such as Belstaff, Amazon, and more recently, Martin was handpicked by Sir Dave Brailsford to work with the Ineos cycling team, which was formerly known as Team Sky.
That's right.
So that's like, wow, that's so impressive. But our first question, what we want to know is, like, where did this all begin? Like, where did it all start for you? How did you get into this, the motivation and everything?
Yeah, like passion. Where did your passion come from?
Yeah, good question. So first of all, thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. And where did it all start? I'm Hull born and bred. I grew up, exactly, yeah. So I grew up on a council estate. I say grew up, I was probably dragged up, which is probably the better term. But I grew up on a council estate, and then I left school and I didn't really want to do anything else. So I went in the military, and that was my first the first 6 years was me just growing up, really, traveling around the world. I served in South America, the Falklands, the Far East, and all over the world. And I spent a really little amount of time in what they call the leadership school in the military. And that's where I sort of got my first taste of development and how to develop as a person and as a leader. Since then, I sort of then came out the military and I worked for the best part of 16 years in business. And the changing point for me and where it came from is I worked for a global consulting company called Gartner in Stamford in New York. And they were like a global consulting business, 4 billion, 85 countries. It was an amazing time for me. I probably blagged my way into the job, if I'm honest. I look back and think, how the hell did I get in that company at 27 years old? But I did. And then they invested heavily in me. I remember going to America on courses and, just being put through my leadership quals and, going on, doing stuff like emotional intelligence and getting all my psychometric testing done. And I just then, something clicked in me. I just fell in love with development, this notion of opening your mind up to being better. And then I got promoted into a leadership position. So I was doing that for my team. I was running all the sessions and doing development and coaching. And I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. So after about 3 years of doing that, and in the end, I was running a $10 million part of their business for them. Wow. I thought, you know what? I could do this for myself. So I quit my job, came back to Hull and thought, right, let's set up. And that was 7 years ago. And here we are today. So it's been an amazing journey.
And is that your second award you've just won for the best consultancy, isn't it?
Yeah, so we won an award last year for best management courses, and we've just won the best UK learning development consultancy. Yeah, so it's a bit surreal, really.
Awesome.
So it was the when it clicks about like the personal development and that was what started the passion. That was what you started realizing, yeah, there's something I could really do here.
Yeah, I'd never read a book in my life before, and from going on one course, I'd never done any higher education. In fact, I hated learning, I hated education. Part of the reason I went into the military is because I wasn't very good at it academically. But when I started particularly in that organization, Gartner, when I started getting invested in and going on these courses, and it opened my mind to stuff, at one point I was reading 4 books a month. I'd completely changed to, actually, if you just open your mind up, if you open up to the concept that you can be miles better in every single way, then magical thing happened. And I'm not so sure that I'd be doing what I'm doing without that shift in mindset, if I'm honest. I was probably a little bit fixed-minded before, like thought I knew best. I've always been driven and I've always done well, but I was probably a nightmare to work, to manage in my time, because I was a bit of a, I know everything and my way is the highway. And what learning and development did for me was shift my mindset to be more open to be challenged and open to be wrong and learn new things. And it's quite a good thing when that happens.
Yeah. Would you say then that, actually picking up the books, although you probably found it difficult because you weren't academically, interested and stuff, but would you say for anybody who's wanting to grow as a person, that is a vital part of the self-development process was actually picking up and sticking with the reading as part of the, do you know, because I mean, like, I'm the same. I like to read for self-development, and it's only since I'd like joined Sensi, probably like at least a year in, did I start picking up books and reading, and I know how much it helps. But obviously you getting to where you've got, was that like a major role, do you know, like actually the reading part of it? Was it?
Yeah, so what I'd say is on that is I'd say it's more important to open your mind up to learn, and there's 3 different ways in which you can do that, okay? You generally, as human beings, we learn in 3 ways: visually, auditory, or kinesthetic, which means doing, hands-on. So for me, reading books is an amazing thing. I love reading a book, and not like a Kindle or anything. I like an old school book, you know. So I like reading because I read and I seem to be able to digest it, and then I make notes, and then I try and, you know, take stuff away from it. For some people, they prefer to watch. So if it's like TED Talks or YouTube videos or motivational talks online, or so some people can't read because they haven't got the patience from an auditory perspective to take that in, but they have a visual way of learning. So watching videos might be their thing. And some people like to just go on courses and get stuck in and try new things and do stuff. They learn by just getting hands-on, right? So what I'd say is books changed my life because it's the way I learn. But other people who say to me, I can't read, I've tried, I'd put it down after 3 or 4 pages. Try something different, try a podcast, try videos, whatever it might be, which you can engage with. So that's what I'd say. But yeah, the book that changed my life was The Chimp Paradox. I read The Chimp Paradox when it first came out, possibly 8 or 9 years ago. And that book changed my life. And since then, that's the direction that I've gone in.
Right.
Can you pinpoint like the precise moment where you say you were like fixed mindset? Can you pinpoint like the precise moment that you suddenly realised, like, hang on a minute, if I started opening myself up and changed the way I thought, I could actually like completely change my life? Can you pinpoint that moment, or was it more of like a gradual process?
I think there's 2 moments. There was a great mentor of mine in the military he was the first person who actually, because I was always successful and driven, but I was a pain in the ass and very outspoken. And he was the first one who tried, instead of trying to curb it and say, right, you've got to stop being like this. He was the one who said, right, listen, and I'll remember this for the rest of my life. He said, listen, you have something special, never change, but you have to learn to harness it and channel it in the right direction. You don't need to be so difficult. So that made me think, that point. And then when I worked for Gartner, the best boss I ever worked for was a woman. Whenever I worked for like alpha males, big driven alpha males like me, we just clashed. But I'll always remember this, that it was a Spanish woman I worked for, and she was amazing. She used to let me chimp off and let me just, you know, say my piece. And then she'd calm me down. She'd offer me suggestions that what I might want to consider, and somehow make me leave the room believing it was my own idea in the first place, right? And she was an amazing leader for me, because she was the one who slowly got me to sort of just start going to this direction. And on the back of that, she sponsored my promotion into a leadership position. The minute I became a leader and I was on the other side of the fence, right, having to deal with people who were complaining, who all had opinions and were being negative, I had a complete like reality check. It was like, oh my God, is this what I was like? You know, so I think a couple of things there. An early mentor said, don't change, just harness it. I thought I can do that. And then the manager I had, who allowed to steer me in a direction while me still believing it was my own idea, was really influential. But the big turning point was when I became a leader, and I thought, shit, I've got to now deal with all of this. And it's not nice, is it? Do you know what I mean? So I think a combination of things, really. And then I thought to myself, well, how can I be the best leader I can be? And that's where I was
just going to ask you that. I was going to talk to you about that.
Well, I steamed in military style, you know, like just telling people what to do and reading the riot act and all the rest of it. And I was getting it really right with some and badly wrong with others. And I thought, right, and don't forget, at this time, I'm 28 years old. I'm the youngest manager in that position in a global company by 15 years. I mean, the people who work for me are all in their 40s and 50s. Mm-hmm. You know, can you imagine that dynamic already, right? So I'm like, listen, I'm going to sink here, right, and be unsuccessful, or I'm going to get my shit together and learn how to do it properly. And that's really where I then thrust myself over 12 months to 18 months in all these courses, reading books, doing some self-reflection, some psychometric tests on myself. And actually, I started to learn that this was the biggest thing I learned. It's like, I need to be the social chameleon as the leader, and I think this is a life lesson, really. It's like, have you ever read the saying, treat people how you would like to be treated?
Yeah.
Bollocks, right? Bollocks. Because if you do that, you'll get it really right with some because they like to be treated how you do.
Of course, yeah.
And you get it badly wrong with others because they like to be treated differently. So I quickly realized that actually what great leaders do is they are their authentic self. They are they embrace who they are. They don't try and be anything that they're not, but they understand that if I'm working with Tam, when I speak with you, I need to understand what your drivers, motivators, and personality style is so I can take a step in your direction. And when I'm dealing with Vicky, let's say, she just likes to be just told, right? Just tell me how it is. Don't beat around the bush. Just tell me what you need and when you need it by. So I know that I can slightly morph depending on, I'm not saying that's the truth, by the way, it might be, right? But I know, so what I started doing is going, it's not on the team to adjust to me. It's my responsibility to adjust to the team. And in order to do that, I need to get to know them. I need to understand them, what drives them, what their sense of purpose is, where they're heading, what their personality style is, so I can make that slight adjustment to support you. Does that make sense? It's like servant leadership rather than dictative leadership.
Yeah, I love that.
How do you feel about like the importance of influence when it comes to leadership? How do you feel that kind of fits into being a leader? And obviously, like with what we do, we've a lot of, as part of our job role, influence plays such a massive part of it, influencing obviously other people. And how do you feel about that? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. And there's a big thing that sort of stands out between, and it's not just leaders, it's even people collaborating, right? Or if you're going to sell something to somebody, or if you're going to work in a team, you can't lead others unless, you can lead yourself, number one. You can't motivate others unless you're motivated yourself. And you can't influence others unless you're influenced yourself. So this is the big thing I was saying earlier on around opening your mind up, because the one thing that I try and do is that how can I expect anybody who works for me to have energy if I don't have energy? How can I expect anybody to be open to be influenced if I'm not open, if I think I'm the finished article and I'm not open to learn new things and be influenced? Do you know what I mean? How can I expect anybody to be motivated to go and achieve an outcome if I'm not motivated? So it's like the mirror window analogy. I think great productive people look in the mirror when things aren't going right at themselves, and they look through the window at others when things go well. And what shit leaders do and crap teammates do is they look in the mirror when things go well, and they look through the window at others when things go wrong. Does this make sense? It's like the fundamental science of accountability.
Yeah.
So I just think to myself, if I look after me and if I get it right myself, that's half the battle. That's 50%. The way I demonstrate, the way I operate. Sometimes I'm having a shit morning. Let's be honest. Sometimes I'm tired. Sometimes I've had a crap school run and the kids have pissed me off, and my chimp's out, and there's been traffic all the way to work, and I walk through the door in the office. And if I allow that to be my first impact, my first 10 minutes, that cascades into the staff straight away. I can change the weather for the good or the bad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So sometimes I have to physically stop, because I'm human, stop myself at the door and go, right, think about your facial expression, your energy, your body language, everything when you walk in there, because that's going to determine the morning they have. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So it's a roundabout way of answering it, but I just think that when it comes to influencing others, we think it's all about, I've got to influence you. And I just think you've got to start with yourself. I think as long as I'm influenced, as long as I'm motivated, as long as I'm leading myself and driving myself, that's 50% of the battle for others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that leads perfectly on to what I was going to ask next.
Yeah, that's perfect, Karen.
So we know, like, the most important relationship you have is with yourself. We know that, and we know that obviously, like, you specialize in increasing human performance, and we love that. What we want to know is two things. How do you not only motivate yourself, but a pattern we see, this is something we see over and over again. We see people starting and they're so excited, they're so motivated, and then they take a break for whatever reason, many reasons. And then it's like the starting again just doesn't happen. They've lost all the motivation. They can't reignite that original passion they had, you know, like people joining the gym and they're like, yes, New Year's resolutions. So how do you motivate yourself? But how do you also re-motivate yourself if you have taken a break and you've lost that momentum that you were in?
It's a great question. And the answer I will try and be very simple with, but I'd say in my experience, 90% of people get it wrong. So if you remember this saying, you need to be motivated by your sense of purpose, not your goals, right? So people set a goal. So they go, right, I've seen online that all these people are selling Sensi and they're all living in mansions and like living the high life on Instagram. That's what I want to do, right? So they set the goal of becoming a Sensi consultant and it's like, yeah, that's where I'm going. And that's great, right? Because that lights a fire in somebody and all the rest of it. And then what happens is they're motivated by the goal. Does this make sense? The goal of having the outputs, the outcomes of being a Sensi consultant and, you know, all the rest of it. And then what happens is they join Sensi and they get all the training. And by the way, I'm just guessing, but I'm just going to give you an example. They get all the training and they understand how it's done. And it's like, right, I get products and I sell it to people and I make money and I get fulfillment and the world's a great place, right? And then what happens is they realize probably 30 days in that it ain't fucking easy, right? And all of a sudden you haven't shifted any products and you go, oh God, no one's interested. Why is that person being really successful and I'm not? And all of a sudden they become incredibly demotivated by the goal because they can't achieve it. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So then it's very, very hard. The human psyche is very clever. You become very, very worried about the consequences. You start becoming a victim of your environment. You know, it's the products are rubbish, the service is rubbish. I aren't in the right area. It's the wrong time in the calendar month. Everybody's skint after Christmas. So you start coming up with all the excuses as to why you can't be successful, right? I'm getting to the point, don't worry. So
keep going.
If you're motivated by your goal without any sense of purpose, you're going to have very low levels of resilience when the going gets tough, when you fail. Does that make sense? Sense of purpose is something. So let me come back to what is sense of purpose and what's the difference. Your sense of purpose is the reason why you are driven to succeed at anything in life in the first place. Generally, we see in human beings there's 4 categories of sense of purpose. And if anybody's watching this, just write these down and think about it for you. So people are usually driven. The first category is prove. They want to prove something to somebody or prove something to the world. So when you want to prove a point or prove somebody right or wrong, it's an incredibly powerful sense of purpose. So maybe the old school teacher wrote you off and said, you'll never amount to anything, right? Maybe one of your parents invested their life in you going through university and whatever it might be. So you had an opportunity and you want to prove that faith right. Maybe someone went, what do you want to be a Sensi consultant for? It's just a pyramid scheme. It's rubbish. You'll never make money. And you go, right, I'll show you then, right? When the human being wants to prove a point and specifically prove somebody right or wrong, it will drive you in those tough times to do whatever it takes to be successful. So that's the first category. Second category is to provide. Some people, we live in a world where, you know, we have to have money. Money does make the world go round. Anyone who says money doesn't make the world go round is absolutely deluded. It does, right? So you have to provide for your family. We need shelter, security, standard of living, all the rest of the stuff. So some people have a situation where they just, in their personal life, they have to provide, no questions asked. So when it gets tough, that's what's going to drive me on. The third category is achieve. Some people want to leave a legacy. They want to achieve a certain recognition in life, whether it's climbing the ladder, whether it's to say, no, I did that, you can't take that away from me. So when people want some legacy, at the end of it all, I want people to look and say, my mum did that, or my dad did that, or my son or daughter did, or my friend. That's what we call legacy. And some people are really driven by legacy. They want to achieve that. And the final one, which is my sense of purpose, which a lot of people maybe wouldn't know that about me by the way I externalize myself, but it's to avoid failure, embarrassment, or struggle. And this is usually born out of hardships. When I do work with people, if they've come from struggle, if they've come from not having much, split parent families, council estate type upbringings, adversity, whatever it might be, then they're programmed with experiences of true struggle. And what happens in this sense of purpose is you go, I'm never going back there. right? In my life, I'm going to have nice things. I'm going to have a standard of living, and I'm going to work my ass off, because for me and my kids and my family, I don't want them to ever experience that. Does that make sense? That instills an enormous amount of drive in an individual. And it doesn't matter how successful you are. It doesn't matter how much your business turns up, how much you do. It never goes away. It's always present. So they're the 4 categories. And summarizing it into a point, because I know you've got 10 minutes left or so, and you might want to ask a few more, is if you are driven by the goal, the dream of going, and don't get me wrong, we need a goal. The goal is the outcome. It creates the law of attraction. I'm not saying don't have a goal, but you can't be driven by it. That's where you're heading. You've got to be driven by your sense of purpose. What is it that's going to get me out of bed the end of the month when I haven't made a sale, pick up that phone, get on those emails and keep going, because that's unique to me. And that's what's going to instill the resilience.
Wow. That was powerful. I nearly cried then.
You worded that really well.
Similar upbringing to you as well. And it's just like, wow, like that really got me that. Honestly, I nearly cried.
And listen, it's one of them things where some people have a sense of purpose, but they've never thought about it. They've never really connected to it.
Yeah. It's like a aha moment, just like then, like you saying that, I was like, oh my God, like we've had a similar upbringing, you know, split parent family, you know, council estate. We want real well off. My mum just did what she could buy it. My dad did all the rest of it. And it's just like, oh my God, I don't want, you know, it's just, yeah, wow.
And when you connect with it, it's really important. And if you sat there watching this now thinking, God, those 4 categories, I don't connect with anything. I had a decent upbringing. I'm not trying to prove a point to anybody. Do I want to leave a legacy? I'm not sure. What's my sense of purpose? Well, guess what? If you're sat there now in that mode, don't worry. It will be somewhere, but unless you establish and connect to it, you ain't going to be successful. Because if you don't have a reason why, when the going gets tough, because nothing's easy, right? When the going gets tough, the path of least resistance will be there, and you will just bail out. And you've seen people come and go in Sensi, I can imagine. And the ones who don't have strong sense of purpose give up at the first hurdle. The ones who keep going, they see the fruits of their labor. And, you know, it's January right now and people are skint in your world, right? So I wouldn't be panicking. I wouldn't be thinking, oh my God, I can't do this. It's thinking, any consumer-based business right now ain't doing that well, trust me, right? However, February is around the corner. And as we approach the spring, we see it in our trends here at our business. We do research on this. Not business to business, but business to consumer, the world you're in. The spring is the time where you really start seeing the opportunity. You really start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and the weather starts improving. People start feeling better. You know, so if you sat there right now in January with a bit of the blues thinking, God, this ain't going well, you're not alone. Don't catastrophize it. Connect with your sense of purpose, understand your reason why, and then start making some decisions and taking some actions as of tomorrow. That's all you can do.
Right.
You really, with those 4 points, you really hit me there, because some people say to us, like, how do you always like keep going? How do you? Because we're really consistent, and it really hit me that it's all down really basically to our sense of purpose, like what Vicky says. It is completely down to that, and I've never heard it so clearly put before, and so like it was just like real clarity what you just said. I really like that. Thank you.
I think the other thing to say is, like, I've got my primary sense of purpose, which is to avoid failure, embarrassment and struggle, for sure, but I'm a little bit in the proof box right now, and I've never been there as a secondary, because when I left my career to start up T2 7 years ago, I put my notice in and told my boss I was leaving. And at that time, I'm rising the ranks in a global company. I've got a really good package. I'm well thought of. They're earmarking me for career progression. And I put my notice in, and he laughed at me because he thought I was joking. And then when he realized I was serious, I'll never forget these words. He went, this is what he said to me. He went, it's all right. You'll be back in 3 months when it all goes tits up.
Wow.
And I thought,
no, I won't.
If I am not driven to make this work now, you've just told me I'm not going to be successful. You watch me go now. And you know what? No matter how big we get and how many awards we win and how successful we are, when it goes out on LinkedIn, my first thought is he's watching that. He's seeing every single thing that we do. And I'm like, yeah, Do you know what I mean? And so sense of purpose is real. It's powerful. It's not about, the goal is important. Don't get me wrong. Set your goals, set your dreams. It creates the law of attraction. But without sense of purpose, you ain't ever gonna see it through. You know, you ain't ever gonna have that resilience to see something through.
Because a lot of our consultants, they come in and they are immediately faced with somebody saying, like what you said, people, because as you know, as with every single job out there, people see people who fail and they're instant like, oh, nobody does well with that. Perhaps their spouse, a lot of, like me and Vicky even have been through it ourselves, where our spouse hasn't been supportive of what we're doing and told us, like, we've kind of had to prove them wrong, and it does really drive you, and I really does make you want to, like, right, do you know what, I'm going to do this.
If you are recruiting Sensi people going forward, consultants, when you ask them, you know, what do you want to achieve, they'll give you an answer, and I'm telling you now, they'll give you an answer which is more an aspiration or a goal. The next question you should just ask them, I'm like this in interviews, people must drive them crazy, but I go, why? And they go, well, because I do. Well, why? Why do you, why is it because you do? Sorry, I don't know what you mean. Well, tell me why. Why do you want to come into T2 and be a T2 consultant? Oh, because I want to work with the top clients and I see what you do and I want to deliver leadership training. Why? And unless you give me an answer that is a sense of purpose, that what I'm trying to do that for, and what's the reason that's important to me. And then in the end, you get to a point where they go, well, it's a silly thing, but my brother's a banker a city banker in London. My other brother's a helicopter pilot in the military, and I'm a little bit of the runt of the litter, and I'm desperate to prove to my parents that I've got something in me. Right, boom, now we're talking. Because that's the thing. That's the thing that when you're struggling, I can motivate you by. Do you know what I mean?
Like from like as a Sensi consultant point of view, just for like people watching, when you are having them like join conversations and recruiting conversations, finding out in the very, very beginning stages why somebody wants to be a Sensi consultant, that will only help us work it in the future to help them when they are feeling like unmotivated or, you know, uninspired, like anything like that.
There's a great saying, I say this at conferences when I speak and stuff, or if I'm working with a group of people who are generally victims. My kids have one life lesson from their dad, which is don't be a victim. You know, if they come on from school, I got detention, oh, why? Well, it wasn't my fault. The teacher, don't be a victim. Do your time. You got caught. You know, I can't do that because of this. Don't be a victim. So I just have this thing. But I say this saying at conferences, which is, we can't control the wind and the tide, but we can learn to sail. And what that means is, it's like the pandemic, financial crisis, the month after Christmas. You can't control any of that, right? That's the wind and the tide. That's the environment you're operating within. Maybe it's about stigma with Sensi. It gets tarred with a brush that it shouldn't be tarred with. Maybe people are skeptical of something, maybe whatever it might be. And you go, oh, well, there's nothing I can do about it, right? That's the wind and the tide. So what great productive people do is they learn to sail. It's like, okay, that's what I'm playing with. Like, how do I, within this, how do I sail in the direction that I need to sail to? Because what that does is it stops you from looking at external factors and going, that's all the reasons why not. It gets you mega focused on what you control, the controllables. And then that's really important, because then you start going, okay, so what can I do? Well, I could do X, Y, and Z. So you start making decisions and taking action. And after all, there is nothing more powerful than a decided mind, right? So when we've got a decided mind on something, we go for it. When we're undecided, we're like a rabbit in the headlights. So for Sensi consultants, for me, you're going to have plenty of times where the wind and the tide are pulling against you, or there's a million reasons as to why it's tough. And if you get dragged in that direction, you ain't going anywhere. So it's like, okay, what do I control in the here and now? What can I possibly do to navigate this? And then I'm going to decide that I'm going to do it, and I'm going to bloody do it, right? And then you're back in control again. And I think sometimes that is a really basic thing to say, but trust me, the majority of people I meet who are unproductive or give up too easily are victims of the wind and the tide. They're just getting pulled all over because it's everything else's fault, right?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And then the sense of purpose bit is what's going to thrust you to do that, to think in that way and say, I ain't giving up. What do I control? What is it that we could possibly do or try that we haven't tried yet? Do you know what I mean? I'll give you one last story before you can grill me for anything else. But this is important because I want people to understand that I'm not just preaching. Everything we do here is the fact that I do this myself. I have to do this myself. When I first left my career and set up T2, it wasn't easy in the early days. I was ringing people up saying, I thought, how am I going to get this business off the ground, right? How I need to start making money. I've just given up my entire career and I've got some savings, but it ain't going to last long. So how am I going to get myself? So anyway, you've got no brand. I've got a basic website. Nobody knows me in terms of in this arena. So I thought, right, I need to get some speaking gigs. If I can get some speaking gigs at conferences, right, I can video it, put the video out to the world, and then bang, I'm in business. So I'm ringing up all these conferences going, my name's Martin Johnson from Hull. I'm a motivational speaker. I wasn't, right? But it was like, can you give me a gig? So they'd all say to me, if you send me a video of 10 minutes of you speaking in front of an audience of a few thousand or whatever, we'll consider you. And I'm like, well, I ain't got the video because I've never done it before. So anyway, every decent conference wouldn't have me because it was like no proof, no video footage, nothing, right? So I thought, how can I do this? And this comes back to this way of thinking. I thought, well, if I can't get to a conference, I'll create my own fucking conference and I'll video it myself, right? So I took £10,000 of my own savings. I hired the Deep out in Hull for an evening. I created a brand called T2 Talks. I convinced 4 other speakers to speak with me on the evening for free, no fee, right? I hired a film crew to come and capture it. And I even gave the tickets out free so people could come. I had 300 people in the audience at the Deep in the aquariums. We recorded it. I delivered my keynote on the night and I loaded it up to YouTube, right? £10,000 gamble. Within, I'd say a month, we had 10,000 hits on YouTube. And guess who comes ringing for the speaking gigs? All the conferences. I went, yeah, too busy. No, I didn't. I was like, yeah. I went, yeah, of course. I went, yeah, of course I'll speak. When do you want me? All of a sudden, off the back of that, we started getting some momentum. There was some present out there. People started booking us X, Y, and Z, and the rest is history. So the point is you can either blame a lack of resources for a lack of your success, or you can get incredibly resourceful.
Yeah.
And if there was a parting comment on for your guys, I think it's about understanding when you start drifting into a lack of resources and you're not becoming resourceful.
That's so powerful.
I know.
Thank you.
I'm man blown. I don't even know.
I don't know what to do first.
I know. Well, I think you've kind of covered it, to be fair, but I just wanted to ask, like, what would you say to people when they feel like they're failing, they're losing their self-belief, you know, when they just feel like throwing the towel in, giving it all up? Because it happens a lot. We all get in a funk, you know, we all have our days where we lose our times. Like, Tam, you've pulled me out of the bloody swamp a few times, haven't you? And I've lost my mojo. Like, but what would you say to those people who really, you know, who really are lacking in that self-belief at the minute and stuff, who feel like giving it up?
Yeah. Have you ever done anything in life where you get a bit of anxiety and panic around a situation, whether it's about traveling somewhere or doing something, and then you pull the plug on it and decide you're not going to do it, and then later on you regret it, right? And that's a very human thing. And I think there's a bit of a saying that, again, I say with the kids or I say with people, and it's a very simple saying, but it will pass. I always say it'll pass. And I think knowing our psyche, we are wired for survival. We haven't come this far by not being really good at survival. So the first part of your brain, your chimp brain, it's called the limbic system in psychology, but it floods your brain with a chemical called cortisol when you feel at risk or when you feel under threat or overwhelmed. Cortisol is your fight or flight chemical. It just wants to get you out of there, or it's got the ability, if you understand it, to roll your sleeves up and fight, right? But most people fly. It's human nature. It's like move yourself from whatever it is that's causing you a challenge or pain or risk. So if you're not conscious, 9 times out of 10, it's just going to pull you out of there, right? So what you got to do is you got to understand that this is very normal. You are not alone. Everybody gets it. I run a business and I do this for a living and I get it weekly, right? You know, no, everybody's the same. But what you got to do is go, it'll pass. It's a chemical response that's making me feel anxious or nervous about a situation, or I'm feeling at risk or overwhelmed. However, in order for me to make a logical, rational decision, I've got to just sit in the pocket for a little bit because it'll pass. If I feel the same in 2 days, yeah, let's deal with it. But right now, I am in no state to make a rash decision. So just sit, go for a walk, separate yourself from work, have a glass of wine, go out with friends, whatever it might be, and then see how you feel further down the line. And that is just about conscious intervention when your fight or flight chemical is flooding your brain. So it'll pass is probably the saying you've got to say to it. And if it doesn't, if you still feel the same, then you have to really have some discussions and analyze it. But 9 times out of 10, you come out the other end of it and go, have you ever done that before where you've had a right shit day? Right? You think, I'm packing it in. I'm just going to put my notice in. I'm just going to give it all up. Can't be arsed with it. And then you go away and you have a good old month to your other half and an offload. And then you sleep on it. And then you drop the kids at school the next day. And then you get back at your PC and you go, right, where was I? And it's passed, right? So yeah, great people, when your chemical response is screaming at you just to make a decision and get rid of all the pressure and get it all out of there, they don't act immediately because they understand that actually that's an emotional response and we need to engage our rational brain on this and it'll probably pass. And if it doesn't, I'll deal with it then. I don't know if that's answered your question, but it's a very basic thing that you need to understand about brain function. Fight or flight chemical in 7.8 seconds to a situation is gonna flood your brain, increase your level of anxiety or worry, and it's either going to be right, I'm going to take this on, or I'm just going to chuck it in. And you've got to be a little bit more disciplined than that.
That again, obviously, because that's like what we're originally wired to do. We're wired from the caveman days. We're wired to survive. That's how our brains were tuned, and that explains, like, in so many ways, why so few people learn to overcome that. They learn to overcome the flight.
It's ingrained in our evolution, you're right. And that's why I say read the chimp paradox. The chimp paradox explains this brain response to stress and anxiety and survival incredibly well. And without being conscious to it, you're always going to be a victim of it. You're never going to be able to just acknowledge it and intervene. So I would implore people, and if you don't want to read the whole 350 pages of the Chimp Paradox, buy my book on Amazon because I cover it. I cover it.
No, please share it because we will.
Tell us.
So my book is called I Am Human, 30 Mistakes to Success. It's about, I've wrote it after 15 years of operating with people and humans in different areas around their psychology and mindset. And it uncovers 30 things that we do unconsciously where we're in different chapters where you read it and you go, I do that. Why do I do that? That's madness. So it just lifts the lid a little bit on if you're into this sort of stuff, on stuff like this. But I cover the chimp theory in section 4, mistake number 4, in 4 pages, and it will probably explain it to a T. But going back to the point is, you're programmed. We are hardwired to survive, which means your response is always going to be. It's why the anxiety and the stress response is far more crippling than the rewarding response will ever be, which is why we do a lot of work these days with people who suffer from stress and mental health and anxiety, and why we've got a bit of a challenge on our hands, because we're hardwired to do so. And if we don't understand it, it can consume us a little bit. It starts dictating our decisions, the way we go forward in life, etc. So part of the work we do is to get people just wrestling back a bit of control with that and get a bit resilient when the going gets tough.
I think we could grill you all day, to be fair, but
I know. But we know you've got important.
How long have we done? How long have we done? About 40 minutes.
Yeah, about
45 minutes, I think. We're about 40 minutes, yeah.
It's absolute pure gold, though.
I know.
Enough. Thank you,
Martin for SFR.
Well, listen, honestly, and I mean it, Vic, in order to support you and the team, if you wanted to just maybe do another one in 3 months' time, quarterly check-in for half an hour, it'd be a pleasure.
That would be awesome.
We'll definitely take you up on that. Thank you.
Definitely.
And your website is trans2performance.com. That's where they can find out more about you. We've been looking at it and meeting the team and things like that. So.
Yeah, and if you're into this sort of stuff, check out our podcast on T2 Hubcast. So it's on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Anchor FM, whatever podcast platform you listen to. But just search T2 Hubcast. Me and the consultants and guests, and I've interviewed Sir Dave Brailsford on there and other things, and we talk from everything from leadership to communication to self-awareness to psychology to what drive and motivation. So there'll be some really cool topics that people can listen to on that as well. And obviously we've got loads on YouTube if you prefer to watch the, you know, the conference stuff, the stage stuff.
And everything that you're talking about is really, really imperative towards people being successful within the businesses, because they are entrepreneurs and they need to be self-motivated. So yeah, you're absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for coming. Enjoy your afternoon.
I will.
We know what you're doing.
Yeah, I'm going on the golf course, so hopefully the weather will be kind to me. But yeah, and yeah, Vic, I guess I'll see you at Saturday morning at rugby.
Yes, you will. I wasn't going to say anything, but how awesome that this bloke is my son's rugby coach. Just by chance, we had a kid the same age, and that's how we came across Martin and found him. And yeah, he's just freaking awesome, and he's so good with the kids as well, and being an awesome coach. So yeah,
they're only 7, aren't they? But you just imagine I'm going to prepare them mentally to be absolutely psychologically elite by the time they get to 12 years old. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and Martin, like to Oscar, Martin is God. He is God. Oh well, can you tell Martin? And Martin calls him the raging bull, and honestly, he just absolutely loves it. He hangs off his every word.
Bless him.
And no, I do as well.
Can't wait to see him on Saturday. So,
I know.
But yeah, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'll definitely come again.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.